Good morning, biology students. Mr. Adair here with another video with guided notes. As you can see, I'm wearing my hat because I've not had a haircut in a long time and it doesn't look great. Maybe some of you can sympathize with me about that and empathize, I should say. So today we are going to be learning a little bit about the carbon cycle. Last week we learned about the water cycle and we'll get into that. So now's your opportunity to pause the video if you'd like, open up your guided notes so you can fill out the guided notes for your points and kind of go along with the lecture today. All right. The carbon cycle, it's one of the most important cycles. All of these cycles we're learning about are important, but this has many, many consequences on humans, which we'll learn about today. So why are we learning about the cycles at all? There are three really main ways why Earth can support life, and they include the different cycles of nutrients, like the carbon cycle, the phosphorus cycle, nitrogen cycle, water cycle, oxygen cycle. For us, we're just going to learn about carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, and water cycle in this class this year. Other things that sustain life are the sun's energy, which we've learned about with producers and the energy pyramids, as well as gravity on Earth is also another one of the main ways life sustains on Earth. So to get everyone started, if you want to pause your video, I'm giving you an answer right now. For part one, as you notice, this slide is labeled with number 1. The numbers correspond to the questions on your guided notes. So if you get confused, I made it pretty easy for you. So, solar energy, the cycling of matter, and gravity are the main ways life is sustained on Earth. All right. The carbon cycle, the definition, what we're learning about here is the movement of carbon from the environment into living things and back again. So again, this is like a cycle. It never really stops. It kind of keeps going and going and going. So carbon will move into living things, into the atmosphere, all over, into the ground. We'll learn about that and the different ways carbon is stored and what that actually means. They say we live on a carbon-based Earth because so much of life on Earth were carbon-based life forms. If you go all the way back in your brain to the beginning of this school year, we learned about 4 macro big molecules that make us, that make life, and they include protein, carbohydrates, lipids, and nucleic acids. So all 4. If you look at those molecules that make us, they are largely made of carbon. And so carbon is the atom that when it's bonded to itself or to other things, it makes the molecules that make life. And that's why it's a really, really key thing. It also, there's abiotic components of carbon too, which in the molecular form, which we'll learn about too. So bear with me, and I gave you, this is answer number 2. As you can see, the numbers corresponded to the slide. Okay, this is a rundown of many different areas where carbon is located. And we're going to get into some of these in more detail. In general, carbon is stored in the ocean. It can be stored, the ocean absorbs carbon. It actually changes the way the ocean is composed when it absorbs too much carbon. It creates carbonic acid, which is not great for living things in the ocean, and we'll talk more about that as well. Carbon can be stored in the earth in the form of fossil fuels, in carbon, sediments, dead material that's died and been buried and kind of becomes more dense over time. It's stored there. Carbon is stored in plants. When plants do photosynthesis, they take carbon out of the atmosphere. Carbon is stored in living things. Carbon is stored, really almost in every part of the earth. However, those are areas where carbon is like stored, where it's kind of trapped. Carbon can also be released into the atmosphere in the form of carbon dioxide or methane. So I'm kind of giving you a lot of information right now. Don't feel overwhelmed. if you want to pause and look at this, don't worry about the numbers so much. Just worry about like the red and the blue. The pools mean like where it's stored, and the fluxes of the red mean like kind of where it can go in and out of over time. Although where it's stored, we can also use that up. But you notice carbon dioxide or methane can be in the atmosphere, and we'll talk about why that can be a problem. Okay, another thing for your guided notes. Photosynthesis. I want you guys to think about how photosynthesis and cellular respiration are related to the carbon cycle. Because if you remember those formulas, not that I make you remember them, um, carbon moves when plants do photosynthesis. They take carbon dioxide and water and the sunlight and transform that into sugar and oxygen. And that sugar is made up of carbon and stored in the roots and in the plant leaves. Now, when animals breathe, do respiration, we breathe in oxygen, we break down the sugars, but then we breathe out carbon dioxide. So if you take a deep breath now and breathe out, you're being part of the carbon cycle as we speak and as you're doing that. So you can use, this is just a little bit of a reminder to use these two words that we've learned about and related to the carbon cycle. If you need to pause the video to fill out your answers, you can do that. All right. Another thing, so this is kind of what we're going to be getting at, and we're going to be talking more about this next week. How else are humans, besides breathing, contributing to the carbon cycle? Well, when we burn gasoline, oil, when we burn wood for like a wood fireplace, any of those things, when we do combustion, the process of burning fuel, there's lots of different types of fuel. There's propane, coal, oil, wood. We release the carbon back into the atmosphere. That's like the smoke when you burn stuff. Um, and because, we have, over 7 billion people on Earth, all burning, a lot of it is burning things to make energy, to cook food, to warm your homes, to do all, to drive the pistons on an engine for a car or a truck or airplane. All that creates burning of fossil fuels and burning of those fuels, which is putting a lot of carbon back into the atmosphere. And it can be a really bad thing. So let's look at that a little bit more, and then we're going to talk more about that next week too when we talk about humans' effect on the environment. We alter the carbon cycle by adding excessive amounts of CO2 to the atmosphere through burning the fossil fuels. I want you to think about this too. If we cut down trees, remember trees through photosynthesis, they trap in carbon dioxide and store the carbon in their trees, in the rainforest, in the roots. So big rainforests and big forests, they do a really important job for Earth to sustain life by trapping carbon. So not only when we burn gasoline, oil, all that, also when we cut down trees, it adds to the problem greatly. The main reason we cut down trees in forested areas is for agriculture, raising cattle, livestock, or planting soybeans or corn for food. So those are two main ways we're altering the carbon cycle as humans. And you can see what this graph is showing. Since about 1850, if you think about the Industrial Revolution, when we really started, burning oil and coal to make energy, that's when we see a increase in carbon dioxide. Okay, here's another important graph, and we're going to look at this in detail. I've got a little assignment for you about it, but okay, let me move my picture here. Really look at this, and this is number 5 for your guided notes, and I want you to talk about it a little bit and just talk about which way it's trending. This graph on the x-axis goes back to 1955, and it doesn't. This is a little bit of an old graph. However, the trend is kept the same. And then on the y-axis we have carbon dioxide parts per million. That's how they measure it, and you'll learn more about that in chemistry next year. But just really quickly, which way are we increasing carbon dioxide or not? There's an interesting research station in Hawaii on I probably will mispronounce this, Mauna Loa, where they take carbon dioxide readings because it's really accurate readings there because it's up on a mountain and the air is clear, so they can get a good idea of how much carbon dioxide is in the atmosphere. All right, why does this matter to us? Okay, here's the deal. Normally, the sun's energy hits the earth, it hits the land, it hits the oceans. A lot of that energy is absorbed by the oceans, by the trees and plants through photosynthesis. However, a lot of that sun's energy is also kind of bounced back into outer space. It just like it hits the earth and reflects back and goes off into outer space. And it's been doing this for billions of years, and it's the sun's energy hitting Earth and getting reflected back or not is maintained through long periods of time, general stability. And we've had a pretty stable climate for a long time. Okay, but when you add carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, the one analogy I like to say is like in the summer, have you ever rolled up your windows in your car? And if you have, think about it. The sun's energy gets trapped in your car and it gets hot, super hot. When we release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, it's kind of like rolling up the windows on Earth. More of that energy is trapped. The carbon dioxide kind of creates a layer and traps all that sun's energy. It doesn't reflect back into outer space. Therefore, when you have all that heat energy of the sun trapped, it slowly warms up the Earth. And that's what's happening. There is naturally carbon dioxide in our atmosphere, and there's naturally a little bit of fluctuations, ups and downs of the temperature. But if you really think about it, look at how much we're burning fuels and putting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. What humans are doing, it's causing the Earth to warm up faster than it normally would, and actually at a very, very fast rate. It's not good. So, when we add too much carbon in the atmosphere, it causes the Earth to warm up, and that's a scientific fact. So, and we're going to talk more about this next week, ways that humans can do less of this, different ways we can get energy, because this is a very, very important topic. So, today we did a brief rundown of the carbon cycle, how carbon goes into living things and out of living things, into the atmosphere, into the ocean, how burning carbon that has been around for a long time in the form of fossil fuels, coal, oil, all that, releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and that causes the Earth to get warmer, which we call that the greenhouse effect. It's kind of like rolling up the windows on your car in the summer. All right. Hope everyone is doing well. I'm thinking about you guys often, and we have a few more weeks left of school here, so just continue to try to get your work done as best as you possibly can. I would love if you checked into our Google meetings. If you look at the school calendar or the weekly calendar, I'm always meeting during our normal class period times, and I send out the link on Schoology before that class every time. So pop in, say hi, and I will talk to you guys all later. Bye.